Welcome back to Learn Too Late, everybody. I am very excited. Shannon and I tried to do this episode last week, but all of the power went out on my block. So I'm very grateful that she was willing to come back and chat with us again. For longtime listeners of the pod, Shannon was one of our very, very first guests. She is the host of Paring Down. She is an author. She's incredible, mom to three. She does all the things, yada yada. We'll pitch her things later in the episode. But one of the really interesting things is she is moving to Finland soon. And so I had promised that the episode I did on moving abroad wasn't going to be a big Debbie Downer, but then I spent 45 minutes complaining about it. And I thought, you know what? Let's bring somebody on who has hopeful, cheery attitude about what life is going to be like. Not that everything is bad moving abroad, but before you have any of the things that you can complain about, let's talk about what are the positive things about moving abroad. So we're going to hear about Shannon's experience prepping prior to getting there. And maybe we'll have you on again to talk about, life later on. So, Shannon, thank you so much for joining us today.
Well, thanks for having me. It's so fun to talk to you. And yeah, I mean, I haven't even moved yet, but so I'm certainly not jaded, but I also feel like I don't really know much yet.
Well, you were an expert in moving, so I would love for the audience to hear you have moved many, many, many times in your life. Why is that? And do you enjoy the process of moving, or is it just a daunting task every time?
Well, I mean, my entire job as a decluttering educator certainly aids me in being able to move more easily because moving stuff is half the battle. But no, I love moving. My dad was in the Navy, so I was a military brat living. Well, I didn't live that many different places, honestly, as a kid because he retired when I was 12. So we stopped moving when I was like 8 and then stayed where his last post was in Virginia Beach, Virginia. But I was born in San Diego, lived in Newport, Rhode Island, back to San Diego, then to Virginia Beach. And then I went to college in Newport News, moved up to New York City in my early 20s, was like, oh, I want to try something different, moved outside of DC, and then moved back to Virginia Beach, met my husband. We moved to Ketchikan, Alaska, and he's in the Coast Guard, which is why we moved to Ketchikan. And now being a Coast Guard wife, we move every 3 years. So from there, we went to Florida, and now we're in Kodiak, Alaska, and then we're moving to Finland. So yeah, I move a lot and love it. I feel like for me, there's true adventure, obviously, in living in different places, but also I really feel like it makes life not pass me by too quickly. Like every time you move, you have to really evaluate what are my intentions? What do I want the next 3 years to look like? What's the most important thing to get off the ground immediately? It kind of just forces you to think about what you want to do in this new place. And so I'm not on autopilot throughout my life. And I really love that.
I've never thought of it that way, but you're so right because when I look at friends of mine who have stayed in the same hometown or at the same job, or I'm like, I feel like I've lived 100 lives in the last 10 years that I've been
Right.
here. And so for you, I can't even imagine what it's like to have children while you're moving, just go from places that are so wildly different in terms of how do you get things? How do you function in the world? I mean, going from, a pretty metropolitan city in Florida to something like Ketchikan, Alaska, I mean, had to have been an insane culture shock. Like, how do you think you balance that with having small children, being married and not getting a divorce in the middle of it? Like, what's the secret for you?
I think it's the fact that my values are the same wherever I live. So while there was quite a culture shock the first time we moved to Alaska, I happen to love Alaska. I really am a mountains person and I am not very social. And so Alaska is a great place for me. But whether we're there or in the busy town of Panama City Beach, Florida, the value of forming personal relationships with people and like not judging a book by its cover and investing in just a very few amount of friendships while investing in community as a whole, because those are two different things, right? You have the one or two people in an area that are your emergency contacts, and they will take care of your kids if you need help, and you can go have a glass of wine. We need those people. We don't need a lot of them though, but we also need a sense of community where we can just go to the grocery store, go to Starbucks and feel like we belong. The people generally know us. And so for me, I really do try and develop both of those things and not feel like I need to make a bunch of best friends and not feel lonely only because I have one or two. Recognize that community and friendship serve two different purposes. I think that's been really helpful. And yeah, like I said, the values stay the same. So with the kids, it's like, okay, let's make friends. Let's be kind to people. Let's bring our neighbors some sourdough bread. My husband loves to bake sourdough. No matter where you live, no matter what neighborhood you're in, if you show up with a generous spirit, people respond. Right. And so it's not too hard to find wonderful people wherever you go. That's definitely a lesson I've learned, is that I was really worried about moving to Florida just because I felt like maybe that wouldn't be my cup of tea, like my type of people, just from stereotypes. And then you find, I'm like, oh gosh, there's wonderful people anywhere you live in this world. And so that's encouraging. And when it comes to my husband, again, our relationship doesn't really change based on where we are. We still enjoy doing the same things together. We still cook the same meals together. We still laugh at the same jokes together. So to me, when your foundation is the same, you can take that anywhere you go. And that has definitely helped us feel comfortable.
Well, I was going to ask what the secret sauce is to creating community, because I feel like I see you doing it so well everywhere you go, or you're just the luckiest person alive that makes these incredible friendships everywhere. But it's not a secret sauce, it's a secret sourdough. So I'm going to have to just make the note of this.
Well, it's that, but it's also truly, it is a matter of recognizing that if you're generous and also authentic, people respond to that. You don't try and be perfect and you just laugh and be like, I gave my kid chicken nuggets 3 nights in a row, or, hey, I think it's easier than we try and make it out to be. But also we are always looking for our soulmate friend. And I don't think I need to look for a soulmate friend. I feel like I can be friends with just about anyone as long as I'm myself and generous. It's almost always reciprocated.
Yeah, you couldn't be more spot on with that, because I feel like when I moved here, I was either in between both, just so desperate for any kind of friend that compatibility didn't matter at all. It was just, hey, do you speak English? Let's be buddies.
Yeah.
And then it got to the point where I didn't want to make any friends unless it was somebody that was going to be a lifelong friend forever, because what's the point? They're just going to move. I'm going to have, my heart broken again. And so at least if they're like a soul sister or something, then you can keep that relationship going long distance. But yeah, I was kind of mourn the loss of the friendships. And I can't even imagine how difficult that is when you're moving every 3 years.
Yeah, that part is definitely difficult. And I learn with each move that it's just as healthy and valuable to invest in those friendships, even if you don't end up keeping up with them. There are some friendships that I really thought were soul sister friendships. And we just can't, we don't have the time and energy to keep up with every single person in our lives, especially if you move a lot. So I'm grateful for social media or just sending off texts like, hey, how are you? That kind of thing. And I've come to terms with the fact that that doesn't mean the friendship was a waste of time. As human beings, we need human connection wherever we go. And I think that I'm mostly just grateful that people do offer that to me as a military wife, because I know there are some people that feel like, what's the point? But the point is that you get 1 year or 3 years of true human connection that's fun and engaging. And it's okay that it's only for a season. It doesn't mean that the love and the joy didn't matter. I mean, it served us well. It's the same reason why I tell people, even if you're not going to be living somewhere a long time, still make your house feel like home. Because as military spouses, it's so tempting to be like, why hang any pictures? Because we're just leaving again. Well, then you're going to go through your whole life living in houses that don't feel like a home.
Right.
So and same thing with friends. If you move a lot, you're going to go through your whole life without any friends. That doesn't make any sense, So for me, I've just learned that it's okay. It's just for a season. And while it does hurt, I'm not going to pretend that right now I'm not in a season of grieving the friends I'm going to be leaving behind in Kodiak, and I've only known them for a year. But also, isn't it so cool that when I lived in Florida a year ago, I didn't know any of these people existed? And now my heart is hurt at the thought that I'm not going to see them. My kids aren't going to see their friends. Like, to me, to settle into that gratitude allows me to move through the grief, and instead of being bitter towards it, to see it as like, what a beautiful sign that I've gotten out there and lived life. And I just think it's cool. I can't wait to find out who I'm going to meet in Finland and who I'm going to miss when I leave there.
Well, I don't feel like this is becoming a therapy podcast for me because everything that you're saying is so deeply resonating with me because I did the same thing with this apartment that we're living in. I felt for a long time like we were just going to move back to America. So what's the point of really making this my home? And then there was the fear of, okay, well, if I make this my home, then am I stuck here? What if I want to move back? What if I want to be more flexible? And now we've invested time and money and energy, et cetera, into this place that grounds me. And that felt a little bit suffocating. And, just hearing you talk, I feel like maybe that has extended into so many other aspects of my life. It's not rooting yourself in the home. It's not rooting yourself in the community. It's not rooting yourself in, okay, well, then I actually just need to learn the language or make the friends. It's easy to just say, okay, well, this is temporary, so I just won't do it. And then if you sprinkle that with a little bit of perfectionist tendencies of, okay, well, if I'm going to do the home, then it has to be perfect. If I'm going to start the podcast, then it has to be perfect. And like you as my friend, you know that this is a pain point for me. This is a very eye-opening thing. So for anybody out there who is maybe going to move, considering moving, keep exactly what she said in mind. But I would love to hear how the hell you're coming to Finland. What does the U.S. Coast Guard have to do in Finland, of all places?
Good question. So they signed a contract with a Finnish shipyard to build U.S. Arctic cutters. So, icebreaker ships, basically, because the Finns know how to build those really well. And so
Incredible.
The Coast Guard hired their shipyard to build it. And so they tapped my husband to come over as the commanding officer to be the Coast Guard overseeing and working alongside the Finnish civilians on the project. So there's going to be a small group of coasties that my husband oversees, but then they're partnering really with this shipyard over there. So there's no Coast Guard base or anything like that. So that has certainly made logistics hard. It's not like we're going to live on a base, right? We are going to live in a small town. We're not even in like Helsinki, right? We are in a small port, ship town.
A small town in a small country.
Right. We are fully immersed. We are going to be fully immersed. And to me, that's really exciting. But certainly right now, we're 2 months out from leaving. It's hard because, like, what do you do about housing? They don't have a rental market in Finland. That's not, most people own their houses, or if they rent, it's in an apartment. Well, we have 3 kids and 2 dogs. So we need a house with a yard. I mean, need is a strong word. That's relative. But we would like a house with, I know you guys don't have a yard and you have kids. It's doable. But we're trying to figure what that looks like and, signing the kids up for school and figuring all that out. And we can't necessarily navigate the websites because they're in Finnish. So we're doing Duolingo, but that can only go so far. So, the logistics of getting it set up in a small town is challenging, but at the same time, everyone is so helpful. I think that's honestly the biggest thing that I'm excited about is knowing that, like I said, I learned that there's good people in the world at a young age, no matter what. Like when I waited tables in Times Square, that was the biggest takeaway I had from that experience, was that for every one mean table, you were going to have 20 wonderful tables of people you wanted to be best friends with. So I've just learned that most people in the world are wonderful people, and the media would tell us otherwise because they feed on our biases as humans to be attracted to negative information. But at the end of the day, most people are great. And so I have a lot of followers on social media, and my post about moving to Finland went viral. And that was the greatest thing that could have happened, because I have literally thousands of Finns in my DMs being like, what do you need? How can I help you? And then I specifically was asking for people in the area where we were living, and they helped us get our kids enrolled in school. They're sending me dance lessons and dance classes for my daughter who likes to dance. They're sending me horse stables. They're letting me know about ice hockey signups for my kids, and so it's really amazing that I think that logistically it'll all work out.
I love you're like thousands of Finns. So the entire country of Finland is
the whole country
helping you out. Amazing. I love this.
I literally got like 12,000 new followers from that one post. And I think something like 85% of them were Finnish. So, I mean, now I got a lot of Finnish followers, but I'm here for it. It's so great. And they're so nice.
Yeah, but just having that little bit of a leg up of someone to say, hey, let me help you out. When I had come here, I made a friend in my first German class, And we ended up just having this ping pong of help sort of relationship where she needed an apartment. My building had an apartment free. She ended up moving in there. They had two kids. Then the second that I started to have kids, she's helping me, like you said, get into the kindergarten, learn all of the things. How do you get a midwife when you're here? Like just all of these things that feel like second nature in your own home, in your own culture. And this is something I like bitched a lot about on this last podcast is just all of those little friction pain points that make it very easy to be defeatist about the entire experience. I think you just have to go into it with the most of positive attitudes like, hey, I'm going to figure it out. In God's year of 2026, we have the internet. Can you imagine doing this without the internet? You're looking something up in a travel book. Like, just need to be grateful that the technology exists, that we have social media, we can connect with people. What have you found to be the most challenging point of all of this prep? Is it leaving your life and everything that you really know, your culture behind? Is it the geographic distance? Like what are you anticipating being tough for you?
Well, right now, honestly, the toughest part is making sure we have somewhere to live because we have to get there in 2 months and the Coast Guard only goes so far in helping us. So that's, I would say logistically, that's the most stressful part is finding a house. But big picture, I think it's the worry about my kids. You know, as a mom, that's a pretty obvious answer, but it's also the truth. My kids are 5, 6, and 8. So they're at those ages where their friendships really matter. And I really worry they're going to be left out because they don't speak Finnish. And while they're going to spend their first year in school learning Finnish, it's really great. They have a program that's going to help them learn Finnish their first year before they're fully, put into the entire Finnish school system. That's going to take time. And we are leaving particularly a neighborhood that is really special. We live on base in Kodiak, Alaska, so it's very safe. There's a million kids everywhere. It's the 1990s. Like yesterday was our kid's last day of school, and my son got home at 3, peeked his head in, and I was like, bye, have fun. I didn't see him until 8 p.m. He's 8 years old. He was just out in the neighborhood. I had another mom text me like, are you cool if Andrews eats some pizza? I'm like, sure. Another mom was like, oh, we're doing a bonfire over here. So like I kind of kept track of him. He has a watch on too, so I can track him. But, it's very community based, and my kids just have so much freedom. My 6-year-old, she was out and about yesterday riding bikes with her friend around the neighborhood, and I worry that they're going to have a harder time connecting with the kids because they're going to feel left out if they don't understand what the children are saying. Finland, they do teach English. And so I think a lot of the kids will be learning English or starting to learn English. And I know my kids will pick up on Finnish pretty quickly, but that doesn't mean there's not going to be a learning curve and there's not going to be I think there's going to be some growing pains that first year. I'm anticipating that. I'm prepared for it. But as a mom, it breaks my heart because I don't want them to go a year of their lives without connection, especially because my kids are very outgoing and they're very confident and they're very friend oriented. So yeah, that's my biggest concern.
What about for you? I feel like it's easy as a mom for you to be worrying about, as a mom and a spouse, worrying about like your husband's career, where your children are going to go. But for you personally, you're also a person. You have a booming career. You have a book that's about to come
Oh
out.
yeah,
You
that
have an
too.
incredible following. You have this podcast. Um, is there anything that you're worried about in that sense, and how are you handling it?
What's interesting is I'm not really worried about anything for me. I know that that's not to say that I don't think things will be hard. I think I'm going in with knowing that it's going to be hard and balancing that well with excitement. Like I know it's going to be annoying not to be knowing how to read labels at the grocery store because it's going to be in Finnish, and I know those basic things are going to be a challenge and will take up a lot of mental energy. And I am a very busy person because my podcast has 3 episodes a week. Like you said, I have a book coming out next spring. So all the publicity leading into that and around that time, I don't expect it to be easy. but I'm not particularly worried. I guess I'm mostly worried I'm going to have to do my podcast interviews at night like you do because we're going to be like 11 hours ahead. And I am not a night person. So I guess that's my biggest concern is like, I don't have to do podcast interviews at 8 p.m. But that's not the end of the world. But I know that sounds weird that I'm not that worried. And it's, again, I don't think it's because I'm naive to the challenges, but I also am such a believer that life isn't supposed to be easy. And so I don't really worry about it not being easy because I'm like, if I waited for life to be easy until I died, I would just be disappointed in life every single day until I died. Like there are difficulties in life, but the kind of difficulties that come with moving to me are met with an equal amount of opportunity. Like we're going to be able to explore this really cool country. We're going to be able to learn another language. I'm going to develop confidence that I can move through the world and somewhere where I don't speak their language. I think that's so cool. And I can't wait to go on hikes, and I can't wait to find out the different traditions, and I can't wait to go to the Christmas market and see that where Santa is from, because he's from Finland, like there's so much that I'm excited about. And I feel like that really balances out the things that are a little bit scary. So I don't know. I can't say I'm worried about it. I feel prepared mentally for the difficulties that might come. And also, I have to say this, pretty stoked about the childcare situation over there being so affordable.
God, it's life-changing.
Because if I do need to come back to the States for publicity for my book in April 2027, so my publisher's Penguin Random House, they're headquartered in New York. So I think I might go there and go to some kind of appearances on the East Coast. But my kids can be watched until like 6 p.m. and we can afford it. And my husband can watch them while I'm gone and it's no problem. So again, not really that worried about it.
Yeah, I mean, I think you have to stay positive and keep a positive outcome, but I think you're also ready for this because, like you said, you're used to doing hard things. And that's something that I think we are getting farther and farther away from in every aspect of our life. Coming up on friction points seems like you're not optimizing your life. Instead of, hey, doing hard things is important to the human experience and it helps us grow. And I think it ties all back into your platform as well, paring down. It's the easy thing is just to buy something new. The easy thing is just to throw it away, get the new thing instead of, hey, how can I take this thing that I already have and make it better? I can just sit my butt in the same place and never move and never experience new things. But doing hard things, lifting heavy things, this is the human experience. And that's something that I think I forced myself to do before moving here. I think I had a lot of challenge in my life and I was always trying new things and forcing myself out of my comfort zone. And then I got to Germany and I almost just took a deep breath and stopped doing anything. And I think that exacerbated the problem is now I'm faced with all of these hard things in the stage of my life where I really want to do nothing. And so it felt particularly difficult. And once you have kids and you realize this is the ultimate hard thing and you're having to teach and watch them grow and navigate that and you're becoming a different person, I think I'm ready to do hard things again. And so I'm trying to go out of my way to kind of make my life a little bit less comfortable, and I'm enjoying it.
Yeah, I am glad that you bring that up because I do think that, so as humans, we have three basic needs. It's called self-determination theory, and we need autonomy, meaning that we are in control of our choices. And I write about this in my book too, so that's why it came to mind. Competency, which means that we are capable of affecting our environment, like we're capable of making a change in our lives. And then relatedness, that connectedness to other people. And I find that even in Alaska, people can find Alaska a really challenging place to live. And I found that those who find it the most challenging are similar to what you were saying. They don't necessarily have any goals to work towards. They don't meet the challenges with excitement. And so they're not getting that self-determination of competency, of being able to positively affect your surroundings. And that can look like reaching a goal at work. It can look like, turning finding a community, anything that makes you feel like you are positively having an effect on your environment, and that it's because you've put effort into doing it. And so I think back to when I first had my first child, and I had some postpartum anxiety, and one of the best things that ever happened to me was the fact that my job, which I was on maternity leave from, called and were like, I was part-time, and they were like, hey, we want, when you come back, would you be assistant director of the entire department? Like, would you come on full-time and be assistant director? And at first I was like, you're crazy. You're offering this to a brand new mom. I mean, power
Right.
to that CEO. Like, let's not let moms have opportunity. So I was grateful for that, but also like very overwhelmed because I hadn't slept more than 45 minutes straight in, weeks. And I really thought I might die. My husband was out to sea. So I was a solo mom. I didn't have the support of my husband at home. And it was a very dark time in my life. And I ended up saying yes. And my family thought I was crazy, but it was the best thing I ever could have done, because it forced me, instead of to sit around and freak out about the fact that my baby's not sleeping and I'm not sleeping and breastfeeding's not going how I want it to, and my husband's gone, and I'm, 40 pounds heavier than I've ever been in my life, and all the things that made it so hard. And instead I had to go to work and I had to produce what I needed. I had to focus on what I needed to do for work. It was the best thing that could have ever happened to me. And so I've learned that no matter where I go, I need to make sure I am doing things, like you said, so that it's not like I'm sitting there ruminating. So when I moved to Ketchikan, not only was I, had my babies to take care of, but I wrote my first book when I lived there. When I moved to Florida, I started the Paring Down podcast. Now we're in Kodiak. I wrote my second book here, signed the book deal and got that done. And when we're in Finland, I still have this podcast. And I think that it's important to have something. It doesn't have to be work, but we need something that distracts us from the difficulties and focuses us in our ability to be autonomous and competent human beings. And so I think sitting around and like wishing life was different or thinking about how hard things are is going to be exacerbated if you don't have anything to distract you and remind you that life is great. And one of the most important pieces of a happy life is resiliency. You have to be a resilient person. And so when we go through life trying to avoid all struggle, we don't develop any sense of resiliency. So at the first sign of struggle, we think that's hard. Let's get away from it. And I've learned that's not it. Let's work through it. What lessons am I going to glean from this? And it allows me to be more resilient. The next time something hard happens, I know that it'll get better again, or I find the tools to believe that it'll get better again. And I don't know. I just really think that like you said, we live in a world where convenience is king. And I think that it's not surprising that we also see a world that is struggling with happiness.
Yeah, I'm with you. Something interesting that I've just kind of noticed recently is that I feel like I've lost my competitive edge. And I say that as, I was a former, semi-professional athlete. We competed in pageants together, all these sort of things. I remember feeling this real grit and urge to want to be, it's not just like wanting to be the best, wanting to be the winner, but real like, I want to have that fire under me to cross the finish line first again. And I felt it in little bits of projects and things, but I was also realizing like, where did that go? And I thought, well, I'm just becoming more mature. It's not the pick me energy that I have anymore. I don't need to be the person in front of everybody, the center of attention. But I also realized that it was extending to other aspects of my life where I was just kind of like throwing my hands up in the air, like, good enough, or like, and I don't like that because I am, a perfectionist at heart, and I want things to be good, and I want to be good. I want to thrive at these things. And I think when you get into that complacent mindset where you're thinking, okay, well, it's difficult to be competitive. And I think that's where my mind had kind of gotten, because you have to push through things to be the winner, to be at the front of the finish line. And that is inherently hard. So when you're trying to avoid hard things, you lose personality traits in the process.
Oof, yes. And to piggyback on that, I think also the older we get, the more logistics get in the way of our dreams. In order to get to the top, you have to have big dreams that you can get there. Like I mean, the science even tells us that without self-efficacy, which is the belief that you can actually get something done, you're not going to get it done. And so when we're younger, we're more audacious. We think I can be Miss America. I can be Miss USA. I can start this business and I can, whatever it is, we have all these dreams. And then, the older we get, the more we see that maybe we didn't reach them, or we want to focus on our kids, or whatever it is. And something I'm very grateful for is my husband. He has never let me or us stop dreaming. I think that's why we're so excited about this move to Finland. It's why we enjoy moving. It's like we've always dreamt of having this big, adventurous, wild, crazy life. And we're going to say yes if they say, do you want to move to Finland? You know what I mean? And
Yeah.
for him and for me, that's a big part of our dream. But also for me with my career, with paring down, I'm kind of going through that right now too. Like, it's very easy with this book coming out next year to be like, well, I'm just grateful that I got this incredible book deal, and I'm just grateful that the podcast has done well, and I just hope the book reaches who it's meant to reach. And interestingly enough, I had a great conversation with Greg McKeown. He is the New York Times bestseller of the book Essentialism, and then he had a second bestseller called Effortless. He's like a huge deal. And I was very grateful when he came on my podcast. He spent about 20 minutes with me off air just talking about my writing and my book. Like, it was a mini masterclass.
Wow.
And he said, Shannon, there's two different types of writers. And you have to decide right now which kind of author you want to be. The one that says, this is a bucket list, and I'm grateful for this book deal. And the one that says, I want to be a New York Times bestseller. And if you don't decide that, then you're going to fall into the first one, and that's great. And you can be proud of that book. But if you want to be a New York Times bestseller, you have to decide that's what you want. Of course, you have to be okay with it not happening, but you have to have the dream in order to write the book that is worthy of that dream. And that stayed with me the whole time I was writing. It's with me right now as I'm editing. And I'm telling you what, I am in this stage where everyone's like, oh, it's fun. Like, they're sending you book cover options and you're starting to think about publicity. Isn't this the fun part? And for me, I'm like, no, like, this is so stressful. And it's easy for me to want to go under a rock and be like,
Yeah.
who cares what the cover looks like? That's not what it's all about. Or like, okay, like, even if I don't get enough publicity for it to be a big bestseller, like, it's no big deal. And yes, of course we want to manage expectations. And of course it's not about the awards and the accolades, but it's also like, no, Shannon, push. And I'm telling myself that now, no, push. I have a meeting on Monday because I have to tell them I don't like the covers that they sent me. And I don't know how to fix it, but I know that it's not right. And I was telling my agent, like, this is intimidating. And they're like, no, like, fight for what you know is right, even if you don't have the perfect way to explain it. And, I'm starting the publicity now, almost a year out, and I'm intimidated by it. And I'm like, oh gosh, like, I'm reaching out to chambers of commercers and women's leagues and Phi Mu fraternity, because I was the Phi Mu, and looking for speaking opportunities. And I could just not do this. I could just say, I'm going to let the Penguin publicity people do this. But I'm pushing, and it's hard and it's scary. And frankly, I low key hate it, but I know that it's worth it because I'm not going to not dream. I'm not going to not say, I'm going to do what I can to make this thing a bestseller. And if it's not, that's fine. But I'm going to push for it, just like I pushed to become Miss New York or to become Miss America. And I didn't become Miss America, but I certainly don't regret pushing myself because that made me into a better person. I met friends. It was an amazing experience. It's something to be proud of. And I want to look back on this book experience and know that I gave it my all, even though it's really hard. So I do think that, there's a level of dreaming that we cannot put behind us and say that was only for my youth. Like, no, I'm 38 years old and I'm going to make sure that I don't let my dreams turn small.
I am 100% with you, and like, shout it from the mountaintops. I feel like the thing that changed my life here was I had done all the things. I had my mastectomy, I moved here, I got a master's in law, I was looking for jobs. The only job I could end up getting was I was the personal assistant to a CEO here. And so it was just glorified coffee fetching job and like ego padding thing. And I got fired after 6 months. And I was so devastated. Like, I have a law degree and I'm getting a cappuccino for this guy. And I'm not doing a good enough job getting a cappuccino enough to get fired at my big old age. And I went home and I sat and had this boohoo to myself and opened up Instagram. And then Sports Illustrated had that casting call for their runway show. And I said, you know what? Fuck it. Like, I might be over 30. I might not have real breasts. Like, I might be all scarred up, but I'm just going to go do it. And that changed my view on life, past 30, which sounds so crazy now as I get close to 40. I'm like, 30, like what a joke. But from that moment, I have never stopped dreaming. And I have never let myself get in the way of thinking that I could do things. And I'm going to grab this off my board here. So 1 month ago, Victoria's Secret just had this casting call for their runway show. And I know that they're looking for a young, fresh face, and I'm not a young, fresh face, but I'm like, you know what? I'm going to just do it and put myself out there. And again, why not? Like, I will regret it for the rest of my life if I don't just throw my hat in the ring. And so I told Christopher, and a lot of times he's the very practical German who's like, oh, okay, that's a nice thing you do. And he said to me, he goes, why shouldn't you get it? And I just wrote it down on this little post-it note, and I put his name and I put the date and like stacked it up on my board. And he's like, just this very clear of like, "Oh, why not you?"
Yes.
And so few people have that view of why not me. And that is a mindset that I think so many of us would really do ourselves a service of just feeling confident in who we are and feeling like we are worthy of the success. And that takes a lot of, like you said, self-efficacy, self-worth. And once you get there, though, you can't let yourself fall out of it. And it's easy to fall out of it, to fall into motherhood, to fall into this new chapter of your life, to feel like you're too old. And I'm at the stage like, no way. I'm just gonna, swing for, what do they say? Like,
Swing for the
swing for the
fences.
bleachers or whatever. Yeah, yes, for the fences. And you got to do that. And I agree. I think having that sort of mindset in all aspects of your life, and then also into this move, is really going to serve you well to say, hey, why not me? Why can't this be a really great experience?
Right. Yeah. And it speaks to, honestly, it speaks to the topic of gender. I think that women have a harder time saying, why not me? It feels too big. We're taught to be small. And even if we think we weren't taught to be small and we're like, no, I was taught to dream. When you really look at culture, it's not celebrated. It's seen as, oh, she wants attention, right? You
Right.
don't really see
Or
a
it's
whole
or it's
lot
like
of,
you're a bad mom. Why are you prioritizing yourself or putting yourself up there? What are you not doing with your children right now as you chase your own dreams?
it's not fair to your husband. One of my favorite people to follow online right now is Whitney Levitt from Secret Lives of Mormon Wives,
Love her.
because, yeah, she's unashamed. She's unabashed about her desire to do big things. And so she went and did this Broadway gig for a while, and she did Dancing with the Stars, and she's starting her own media company, and she's going to be in 2 movies coming out. And there have been critics saying she's not spending enough time with her kids. And first of all, you don't know her life. You don't know her life at all, how much time she's spending with her kids. But that conversation doesn't happen when it comes to men who are doing big things, when they are out there and they are booked and busy, baby. You don't see that conversation. And so we internalize these things. And even if we think, oh, I don't care what other people think, we do. We're humans. We're literally biologically wired to care what other people think for survival. So, I think that this whole idea of Christopher saying to you, why not you? It's beautiful and it's important. And I'm glad you wrote it down. And I need the reminder too, because I think women, it's too easy for us to think, oh, well, someone else is better, or there's no way that can happen for me, or should I even push to make that happen for me? And as women particularly, we need to. The world needs us. The world is better when women put themselves out there and dream big and do amazing things, because that's been, even if you look at sociological research, leadership boards of companies, these companies and these countries thrive when you put women at the top. It's just the way it is. It's important for our world. And so I think that we have to stop seeing our dreams as unimportant and frivolous, and realize that it's actually not only good for us, but it's good for the world when we pursue them.
Well, I keep seeing these videos where people are just sort of regurgitating the same statistic, and I watch every single one of them. And they say that, when they study children and success in children, like the number one indicator of greatness and accomplishing greatness is a mother's happiness. And your happiness is also tied to your sense of, like you said, personal efficacy, of self-worth, of being able to do and chase great things. Like my number one fear going into being a parent was, will I resent my children? And I know that sounds crazy, but I had all these big dreams for myself, all of these things that I wanted to chase. And I was able to accomplish so many things before I had kids, but I did not want to be the mothers that I saw growing up who are like the Uncle Rico, like, I could have hit the, thrown the football over the mountain sort of thing. And well, if I didn't have these damn kids, I could do XYZ. If I didn't have these kids, I would have more time with my boyfriend. Like just seeing that toxic treatment of children because women feel unfulfilled. I
Mm-hmm.
didn't want that to be me. And so it was almost this bum rush to accomplish as much as I could before I decided to have children. You realize once you become a parent, the two can coexist together. And
Yes.
it's not mutually exclusive. But
No.
even if society tells you and reminds you every day that it is, but being able to have that freedom to say, my happiness also matters is life changing.
And obviously, it's subjective and it's going to be different how we define success. And that is an important piece. But I will say, I think that as women, we think, oh, well, the ultimate success is spending time with my kids and raising them well and making sure they're happy because that makes me happy. And the ultimate success, it's like that. If you can't find satisfaction in just that, then maybe your definition of success is wrong. And I disagree with
Mm,
that. I think that's for some women that might feel successful. But for some women, I know for me, that's not it. It's just not. And it doesn't mean I'm a
correct.
bad mom. I do feel happy when my kids are happy. And of course, they're the priority. I'm not going to pretend that they're not. Like, I will put my kids before myself. And I don't feel bad saying that either. But that also doesn't mean I'm not going to put myself um, towards the front of my life either. It's not about selfishness or narcissism. It's about the fact that both of those things can be true. That I can be a good mom who took my kids to a color run this morning and made sure they got outside and saw their friends. And I can be a good wife and still come home and not have to even tell my husband I'm going to go take a shower, but tell him, hey, I have an 11 o'clock interview with Allyn. And I don't have to say, hey, can you watch the kids? Or is that
Right.
okay? I just go take a shower and come do an interview with you. Do you know what I mean? Like, both things can be true. I can be a good mom and I can be successful at my career. And it's not this toxic idea of balance, because that doesn't exist either. That's another way that we just run moms into the ground. It requires support. I have that in my husband. I have that because we have enough finances that I can send my kids to summer camps, right? There's support that is absolutely necessary. It's not that you can do this without those things. But at the end of the day, for me in my life, it is possible to have both. And I'm not ashamed to say that I would feel dissatisfied if I looked back on my life when I was 90 years old and say, well, I did a good job raising my kids. That wouldn't be enough for me. Did I lean into the things that fired me up and that got me excited and that turned my brain on, and I used my big old brain that God gave me? Did I do things to help the world? Did I do things to help other people? Did I put enough effort into all of the things that to me that matter, to have influence on the world around me in a positive way? Not because I want some big fancy legacy with my name on a building, but because I care about other people and I care about future generations and I want to make things better, and because I was engaged and alive when I was alive. And for me, that is more than just making peanut butter and jelly sandwiches and talking my kids through their emotions and raising them well. Those things are important, but there's more to it. And I'm okay with saying that my definition of success isn't just to be a good mom and wife.
Well, to become an emotionally and really all around multi-dimensional person, you have to have more in your life. And knowing you, you are probably a much better wife, a much more fulfilled person, a much better mother, having color to add to their lives because you are continuing to live yours. And I think that that's something that we forget, is that if you are able to recharge your batteries with doing things that make you happy, that give you dopamine, that give you excitement, that are intellectually stimulating, like I know that if I go out and spend an hour doing something that I like, I come home a happier mom, a more engaged mom. I'm not looking to tune out. I'm not desperate on my phone for another dopamine hit to just get me through the bedtime. Like, I have to recharge my batteries. And oftentimes it's doing that, not necessarily outside of the home, but doing something also for me that I like to do. And it's not that raising my children is something that I don't like to do, but it is a different experience. And I think we really, really do get caught up in this idea of balance, and then balance or having it all like requires you to have things in these cups in equal measure and doing things here
Right.
and there. And then when you're pouring too much into one, then there must be less over here. And it's just not that. Um, yeah, I mean, we're going far off on the tangent outside of our moving abroad,
Sorry.
conversation. No, no, no. But this is this is the whole thing. Like, these are the conversations that you have to have with yourself before making these big life decisions. Because the first thing I thought when I found out that you were moving to Finland was, oh my God, she's just signed this big book deal. Your career is taking off. You have all of these things going on for you. She must be scared, and not scared in the sense of you can't do it, but it is making things more difficult. It is adding logistical complication to your life. There also has to be a tiny bit of a boohoo of like, man, I just built this thing and everything's going great for me. And like, not that moving to Finland is a bad thing, but it is throwing a wrench in a certain way in what you're doing, because you're probably getting into a groove doing it. But I feel like you always find a positive way to spin it. Even when I message you like the first time, you're like, yeah, it's a lot, but like, we'll make it work.
Yeah. I mean, for me, I just don't think anything is going to change in a bad way. Like but this also speaks to, so my whole platform's around decluttering, and not just decluttering your home, but decluttering your life. And I have a lot of margin in my life. Like I remember emailing Joshua Becker, who's probably the most famous person in the minimalist world. And he was coming on my podcast, and we have the same, we're same book editor, and so he and I connected a lot. And so he had his very first New York Times bestseller come out. It was so exciting. So he's had a couple books done really well, but finally he hit the New York Times bestselling list. And I was emailing him, and I'm like, oh my gosh, I know you're probably really busy. Thanks for getting back to me. And he's like, people say that to me all the time, because he's very successful. But he's
Right.
like, I'm not that busy. Like it's fine, because when your focus in your life is on realistic minimalism and decluttering, as his and I are, we have a lot of margin in our schedules for a reason. I've decluttered the things in my life that don't matter. Like, I don't care if my house isn't perfectly tidy all the time. I have 3 kids under 8. That would be sad, and I don't say yes to things I don't want to say yes to. I've decluttered the things
Right.
in my life that don't matter, so that, I'm not too worried that there's some extra logistics for 6 months as I'm getting settled in a foreign country. And yes, it's going to be busy, but I'm not too worried about it. And I think that speaks to the importance of decluttering our lives, because it's important to have margin so that when things like opportunities like this come up, I can say yes confidently. I think more other people were more worried about my career, and still are, than I am. I'm like, it's fine. Like, I'm still going to
Right.
put out the podcast. I still am going to fly. There's a straight flight from Helsinki to New York City or to the East Coast. Like, it's way easier to get to the lower 48 from there than it is from Kodiak, Alaska. I'm on a small island. It takes me 2 days just to get to San Diego, like on the West Coast.
Right.
Like, it's much easier. I don't know. Like, I just think that you have to have margin in your life so you can say yes to these things and not worry about it.
Well, I love that you say that, and I think that's a really great thing about your content. And obviously, I've known you for, God, what are we coming up on, like 13 years now or
1
something?
million years we've known each other.
Exactly. but just being reminded with your content. And I remember I kept it in mind when I had this very difficult time in my life where I had started another company. It was successful, but I felt this really, oh, it's gonna make me cry, but like this really strong urge of like, this is not what I should be doing. the work was making me resent my children for existing because they were taking up the time that I needed to work and to do this job and etc. And leaving that and walking away from it felt like such a failure. Like, well, I've just wasted all of this time, you know, and it's this thing that you talk a lot about in your content of like, well, I've spent all this money on these clothing or this stuff or whatever, like getting rid of it, it hurts. And it felt like the same with this career of, well, I built all of this and I spent so much time and energy and emotion and walking away like, you know, people are going to think I'm a failure. I'm going to feel like a failure. I'm going to have wasted this. And then when I really sat down and ruminated with it and said, no, like I am creating flexibility in my life. And that is the number one thing that I value because exactly like you said, last week, both of my kids came down with hand, foot, and mouth disease. And it was no big deal
Mm-hmm.
because I have set my life up so that I am my own boss. I set my own schedule. If my kids get sick or somebody gets cancer or something happens, you have the flexibility or the margins, like you said, to be able to handle it and handle it without it being a knockdown, earth shattering life crisis. Like your emotions can be the crazy thing, but the complication of my life doesn't have to be. And
Yeah.
that I think is a beautiful part of your content and what you put out and how you remind people of, hey, if you are just willing and able to make these small changes in your life, pare down things, will create more happiness, feels like more joy, makes you feel like you have more things because you're able to see the things and use the things that you have. Um, do you think that that has been a real big player in your sense of happiness around how your life is and how you're able to navigate things?
Yeah, absolutely. I loved everything you said. Yeah, you're talking about the sunk cost fallacy. Like, I've gotten this far, I've done this much, it'd be a waste, you know? And I do think that it circles back to what I shared earlier, that the friendships aren't a waste, the experience never a waste. It's, you know, I don't, it's okay to say that, okay, we're moving on from this. And that's not necessarily, I guess, the sunk cost fallacy. But anyways, the point is that yes, I do think going through life with that mindset obviously makes things easier on a practical level. Like, we don't have as much stuff to deal with. And it's amazing how having too much inside of your house can truly bog you down. Like, it takes your energy away, you know? And my husband is a stuff guy. He's like a low key hoarder. We love him. It's fine. And my relationship is more important than a perfectly decluttered house. So when people walk into the house and they see a bunch of stuff, I'm always like, yeah, well, I'm also married. So my house is not as minimalist as it would be if it was just me. But that on a practical level, I'm not, you know, running around worried about housework all the time and trying to keep my house tidy. It's just, I don't have that much to deal with. And I'm in good rhythms. And I think that's important. But yeah, having the margin and thinking through what actually matters in life, living an intentional life, it makes a move like this so much easier. You know, for me, I'm always saying to myself what should stay and what should go. That to me is the basis of living intentionally, being off of autopilot. And so we can say that with our stuff, but we can say that with the commitments that we do. We can say that with the relationships we have. And I really think that that does allow me to be more open to opportunities because I have no problem saying no. I say no to a lot of opportunities, but that it makes the yeses way more exciting, and I have more time to do the yeses. So I think that all of us can benefit from this idea of decluttering our lives, not for the sake of less, but to honor what's good and to make room for good stuff we haven't even imagined yet. I mean, that's the running title of my book, not to keep bringing it up, but it, you know, it's obviously top of mind right now, but my book is titled Don't Save the Good Stuff. And Finland to me is the good stuff. And I wouldn't have had room for it if I had created a life that was so bogged down that I would feel too overwhelmed to have said yes. Because this is an opportunity with the Coast Guard. We got to choose. That's not usually the case with the military. And I think giving yourself space to say yes to the good stuff it just makes your life so much more exciting, and it makes opportunities like moving to another country possible, frankly.
Well, I'd love to ask you about your concept of home. And that's something that I talked about in the last episode, where that's been a mourning experience for me, where when I had first moved here, it felt like home was this place that I had left. And now I'm in this weird situation where Germany doesn't necessarily feel like home for me, but America doesn't either. And so I'm having this reverse culture shock of going back there and expecting to be able to take this deep, relaxing, decompressing breath and just exist in the comfort of home. And there's this harsh realization that that doesn't exist anymore. And so home is the things that I have built. Home is my children. Home is, my husband. But there is like a mourning to that, a loss of that. Do you feel like you've experienced that in moving these certain places? Obviously, it's not moving out of the country, but when you don't have that cul-de-sac with all of your family members and your friends and this consistency over time, like how has that definition of home changed for you?
I think I realized a long time ago, probably as young as a teenager or a preteen, that I'm not the kind of person to romanticize needing a physical home. My parents divorced when I was 11. And, I had the house I grew up in starting when I was 10, and I loved that house. But, I don't feel like I have a home, if you will. Like when my mom died, that felt like a big piece of home being gone, house or not. It was more so the feeling of being completely seen and comfortable and like being familiar. I think that's what home is that it should feel familiar. And so for me, losing my mom and then, of course, the divorce earlier, I've never felt like I don't feel like when I go to Virginia Beach to see my dad and my stepmom, my brother and my sister-in-law, as much as I love them, they're wonderful. I don't feel like I'm going home. I'm going somewhere familiar, but I don't feel like I'm going home. But I'm okay with that. And I think that sometimes, I don't know if this is my mom. My mom was very pragmatic. And she was very loving, but very pragmatic. I think I romanticize the things that are worth romanticizing because they can come true. Like doesn't make me sad to romanticize them. And then I refuse to romanticize the things that I have no control over. And the fact of the matter is I'm not the kind of person that has a home that my parents have lived in for 50 years and they're still together drinking sweet tea on the porch. Like that's great for some people. That's just not a reality in my life. And so why would I romanticize that? Like that just would lead to disappointment. And also I don't care. I'm like, am I supposed to care? I don't feel like home is a house. For me, and this is just for me, I understand this won't be for everyone. I don't even feel like home is my stuff. For me, home is my immediate family right now, my kids and my husband. That is home. Home is also my friendships. Once a year I go meet with my girlfriends from college. We were in an an all-girls a cappella group. They're called the Pearls. I feel home when I see them once a year. These girls I've known now for 20 years, and we get together once a year. We've been through everything together. That's home. So home to me isn't just a spot. And that sounds, I don't know. I think that sounds sad to some people and that sounds deep to others. And I don't think it's either one of those things. I think it's just a fact of life and it's okay with me. Like I'm not going to romanticize needing to have some beautiful definition of home. I'm just going to be happy when I'm with my people and I'm happy with that.
What do you think your kids would say if you asked them?
I think they would say it's where we are. We're mommy and daddy. And, I think that it's fine. Again, also, I read things all the time. I don't think people they necessarily think of military kids when they say this. Maybe sometimes they do, but they're like, oh, kids need security and they need to be in the same, have whatever, their community be the same and blah, blah, blah. And like, maybe that's true, but my kids aren't going to have that. What am I going to do? Sit around and be like, I'm a terrible mom because we're in the military
Right.
serving our country? Like, that's dumb. No. And I was a military child. I know plenty. My husband, for example, he moved something like 18 times before he turned 18. Okay. And he's one of the most well-adjusted, wonderful people I've ever known. And he's got wonderful friendships. Like dudes usually don't have good friendships. Guys don't have deep friendships. He's got great deep friendships with his friends from college. Like he's able to have deep relationship. I refuse to let statistics scare me in life. Like I love psychology. I love sociology. My degree is in psychology. I think it is interesting to look at the science of how people work. But one of the most interesting things about sociology and psychology is that there is never a 100% anything. We're all different. And every community is different. Every person is different. And I absolutely refuse to let those statistics be a doomsday situation. Like, oh, my kids are not going to be as well adjusted because they move all the time. No. Maybe that is the case for 70% of kids. My kids are going to be in the 30%. Like I just refuse to let that scare me. And so, yeah, I think, sure, whatever. They're not going to be able to live in one place all the time, but they're going to have this breadth of experience. They're going to be resilient. They're going to be confident. They are going to be intelligent. They're going to be well informed about the world. They're going to be empathetic. They're going to be amazing kids. And that's that.
I think it's easy to romanticize life as you know it and is comfortable for you. So when people say, well, this is the way that I was raised and I turned out great, so this is the way to do it. And I think about that with my kids a lot too. Not that they're moving around as much as you are, but they are experiencing a very different life than I did. And there's an inherent worry of like, well, what if they won't turn out, like I did? And it's like, yeah, well, so what? They'll probably be better because they do have
Right.
this flexibility. And like, that's great. But I'm like, man, like I remember my eldest daughter's like first couple flights, and all of them were booked by a company that I worked for. And so we were flying in first class everywhere we went. And I realized that my daughter had never not flown first class until we were in economy because mommy had to pay.
Wow.
And she's like, Mom, why are there people sitting next to us? And I'm like, this is like a life and experiences and things that like I could never have dreamed of as a little kid. And like she'll be
Right.
going to an international school and being with people from all over the world. And like, I'm from a town that has one stoplight. And so I just can't even imagine how open her eyes are going to be to what life can be because of her existence here, because of her ability to travel and see new things and experience new things and, move and have a mom who's not from the culture that she's existing in, and she can teach me things. And I think that that's kind of a cool thing. And I'm always having her be my little translator or do, things here and there. And I think that gives her a sense of self-worth and self-confidence and wow, like look at this great thing and I'm helping my mom. And yeah, it's really easy to get caught up in what you're doing and how it can hurt your kids instead of celebrating, hey, look at this different life that they're living and how special that's going to be. Because different isn't bad.
Well, life is what you make of it. I say this all the time when people are like, oh, are your kids, is it hard for them that they share a birthday? I have 2 kids born on Christmas Eve. So that's an aggressive time of year for us. And I'm always like, no, kids, and this goes for us too as adults, but kids, they respond in whatever attitude you give. So I've always been like, isn't it the coolest? You share a birthday? That is so crazy. And it's on Christmas Eve. That's the coolest. So never once has it crossed their mind to be like, why do I have to share my birthday? Right? Like that's not the attitude we bring. And we can do that for ourselves too. Like you were saying with your daughters, you're thinking about all the positive things that have come from the way that they're being raised that is different than how you grew up. And same for my kids. I'm looking at all the positives they're going to get out of this. And that's what they're going to get out of it. You get out what you put in. So you say that it's miserable to share a birthday and I can't believe it's on Christmas Eve. That stinks. Okay, that's how you're going to feel. That's what you're going to get out of it. Or you can say, that is so crazy that you share a birthday with your sister 2 years apart. I can't believe that happened. And it's on Christmas Eve. How awesome. That's what you get out of it. So yeah, I think life is what you make of it. I understand there's some privilege there, but I also think all of us, 100% of humans, no matter our privilege, our background, our wealth, our anything, we have cognitive control. That is what makes humans particularly special, is that we have the ability to stop our thoughts and say, I'm going to think a different one. A bear doesn't have that ability. A bear sees a fish and says, I'm going to eat the fish. And they're not thinking whether that's a good choice. You know, humans have cognitive control. We can stop our own thoughts and move them in a different direction. And if we're not taking advantage of that and we're letting life happen to us, then yeah, I think all of us are just going to sit here thinking the grass is greener on the other side, or we're going to be miserable or worried all the time. And we don't need to be. Whether you live in a small town or you have a bigger life where you move like we do. I'm not saying that if you live in a small town or you go back to your hometown that you're living some sad life. I just hope that you have the cognitive control to get off of autopilot and think, is this where I want to be? Is this what I want to do? If it is, that's wonderful. Enjoy it. But then we don't need to project our worries or our issues on other people. If that's working for you, that's working for you. This is working for me, and this is working for my family. And we're all just doing what works well for us and then adjusting our mindsets to make the most out of the life that we have.
Well, I love what you had said about, creating that positive environment for your kids. And I think that is one of the biggest things. And I'm continuously learning every day is that your children are just sponges of your energy and your vernacular and the things that you're doing, the way that you're communicating, good or bad. And so when you are positive about those things, like, oh my God, how amazing you share a birthday with your brother, like awesome. This you were born on Christmas. What a gift. Same as Jesus. Like these are
Right.
amazing, things. But I also see it, with my eldest too. She's starting to pick up on my negative energy. And I caught her saying, I don't know if it was yesterday or today, but she was like, I'm so stressed out right now. And I'm like,
My kids have said
that
that too.
that comes from me because I'm sitting there like, you guys are stressing me out. Like, get out of here. And I have to like realize and catch myself like, hey, my energy, my stress level, like all of these things are imprinting on my kids. And like, I gotta be a little bit more positive. And like, I will never be perfect in doing that. But
No.
yeah, like they soak up the good stuff. And I see it. We're potty training, my second. And I dance and say like I throw my hands over my head and go ooh ooh every time she goes poop or like does these things, and now she does it for everything that is great. She finishes a puzzle ooh ooh like, and it's that positivity she's like bringing to her life from the potty training, but it's like they're soaking it all up. And so
Mhm.
if you're bringing that happiness, you're bringing the energy, you're bringing the positivity, your children are seeing a thriving, loving relationship, no matter the circumstance, that's what they're soaking up. Like that is the childhood that they're going to remember.
Yeah, moving to Finland, man. We gotta. They were nervous at first, and they still are, but mostly positive because we're telling them how awesome it's going to be.
Yeah.
Right? Yeah.
Well, I am so excited for you. This is going to be an incredible new chapter. I am also selfishly very, very happy to have another friend on my time zone that I can talk to. And
Yes.
I have never been to Finland. It's one of the last things here in Europe that I haven't been to visit. So I can't wait to come and see you. I can't wait for everyone to follow along. So I'm going to let you do a little plug for everything that you have going on. And we're going to add everything in the show notes as well, where people can find you, follow along. If they're looking to pare down their life, where do they find you online?
Thanks. I can't believe we're going to be hanging out in Finland. It's so
It's
exciting. Okay.
amazing.
Yes, you can, if you want to declutter your house or just live more intentionally, I have the Paring Down podcast. Remember, there's no I in pair. So there's no I in pair. Sorry, that was not said clearly. So PARING, Paring Down podcast. I have episodes Tuesdays, Wednesdays, and Thursday. So those Tuesdays are really about decluttering your house. Wednesday is good stuff episodes. What do we want to fill our lives with? And Thursdays are mini episodes that are 10 to 15 minutes long called Chai Chats. I also have tons of freebies where if you want a decluttering checklist or a know your why worksheet or 10 free decluttering hacks or 20 most common roadblocks when it comes to decluttering, all of that's on my website. Go to shannonleyko.com, leyko.com. Go to the declutter center and you can get all those freebies there, or join my newsletter. And my social media is at Shannon Leyko, Leyko, and I love to have you on there too.
Well, guys, you have to follow along. So if you have ever fantasized about moving abroad, if you are thinking about it, if you are in the process of doing it, I know that you're going to be sharing a lot about your experience. And I also just feel like you have such feel good content, and it's letting people know how they can improve their lives without judgment, without shame, in very practical, digestible, real life ways. So make sure you go and follow Shannon, and thank you so much for chatting with me today. And I apologize for everyone who came in who wants like a how to move abroad. That's not where this episode went, but I think that these are all things that you should also be thinking about when you're looking to make a big life change, whether it's moving abroad, having a more positive perspective on things, paring down your life, simplifying so that you can expand. Hope you took something from it today. So thanks. Oh, and I have to ask you, I know we did this in the last episode. What is your current learned too late moment?
Well, this isn't something I plan on doing, but apparently you're supposed to wash your scrunchies. Like I learned that too late. And I've learned it so late that I don't plan on doing it. I'm like, that feels aggressive.
We're learning this today. I don't think that no water has ever gotten near my scrunchie that wasn't post shower.
Yeah, correct. I mean, I'm sure my scrunchies are full of bacteria, but I've
Is there
survived
mold
this
growing
long.
in my scrunchie?
I don't know, but I guess it's like a shirt or anything, like, it needs to be washed, I guess. But that's what
Yeah, I
I've learned
guess
on the
hair
internet recently.
oils, sleeping,
Yeah.
sweating. Yeah,
But I don't
I
care
think
enough
that's
to do
something
it.
correct. This is gonna like flow by us. Like I'm all about self-improvement, but washing my scrunchie is when it gets too far.
Yeah. That's
Okay,
my learn
guys.
too
Well,
late. It's not a
that's
good
our
one.
yeah,
Sorry.
that's our learn too late moment. You're supposed to be washing your scrunchie. I don't think that's going to be a step that either and I are taking, but just in case you want to really optimize your life, yeah, maybe
There you
we'll
go.
put a video in the show notes of how you should be properly sanitizing the scrunchie from here on out. So thank you guys for listening, and yeah, stay tuned for episode 3 with Shannon. Maybe a year down the road of moving to Finland and what your life is like over there. So thank you so much, Shannon, for joining us.
Thanks for having me, friend.